Jubilee has just dropped another conservatives versus progressives. Oh, I'm sorry. Moderate versus progressives? Oh, never mind. It's Tim Pool, everybody. Tim Pool versus progressives on this week's Surrounded. Welcome to the channel. I'm Johnny Guitar. I like to analyze all of Jubilee's political debates. This week, Jubilee has brought us Tim Pool. For your benefit, I've collected a bunch of the greatest hits. First, let me show you the interview they had at the very end of the episode, and then we'll get into the good stuff.
As long as we're trying to have a real conversation and get to the heart of it, things usually work out well. Although there was that one guy who seemed really mad at me, you know?
I came here holding Tim to a very high standard, that of at least a 5-year-old in grade school.
I mostly think that Tim doesn't care about what the fallout of his rhetoric is. He's primarily focused on one thing and one thing only, and that's generating profit. Well,
when you tell me that because I want to vote for what I believe in, I'm making civil war happen, that's just proving my point.
I think Tim stood on his own 2 feet about his beliefs. He did not lie about his prospective beliefs, but I do believe that his beliefs are inherently cowardly.
You know, they accuse me of grifting. I would counter with, if they watched my show even one time, they wouldn't come to me and try and make arguments that I don't believe in.
Yeah, well, that's what I've heard too, that Tim Pool's a grifter. And this episode of Jubilee was a great way for us to decide for ourselves whether or not he's grifting after all. Let me show you what the returning master debate wizard, Mason, had to say.
People can look this up. There's 42 of your titles that have the word Civil War in it.
Correct.
With big fonts on the front.
They sure do.
So why is that? It's sensationalist. There comes a point where people stop taking your predictions seriously.
Are you going to make an argument, or are you mad at me?
I'm not mad at you.
Okay, then let's make an argument about whether or not we are tracking. No. If you're making an argument, you don't like my thumbnails, or you say my name over and over again.
I'm saying that you say bullshit in order to get money.
Wow, that really escalated quickly, I thought. You could see the second that Tim starts going, no. He's immediately trying to deflect. I think he knew exactly where the conversation was going to go. Directly into this tenant media stuff. The fact that he was getting paid conveniently by the Russians to spread propaganda. He didn't really seem to address Mason's claim there, so let's see for ourselves what he's talking about.
This is how it begins. And the reason why I say again, civil war is because the Democratic Party is broke. They're $3 million in debt. The Republican Party has $200 million. Republicans are not fighting in the street. They are funding institutional power. Donald Trump, for instance. Democrats are not funding their party anymore. Prominent Democrat donors are funding extremists.
There have been statements from foreign security advisors, international security experts saying we're facing down high probability of civil war. And I know it sounds crazy.
We are in a cold civil war to a potential civil war.
People might say I'm a little alarmist when I mention a potential civil war.
I'm sure there's going to be a ton of people who look at the title of this video and say something like, Tim's being hyperbolic.
I'm fairly resigned to this future happening, no matter what we do about it. And so I bought a van, and I'm going to convert it to a...
Jesus Christ.
Civil war. Talk of civil war.
We're in a civil war. We are in it.
Civil war. Civil war for a second civil war. Complete social upheaval.
This guy right here, I'd lock him up. I would have this guy arrested and removed. I don't know. You come here, he says. He brings the woman up to search the vehicle leaving the facility.
It's good, okay.
And she goes, it's good, okay. If you coordinate with extremist elements that are obstructing federal law enforcement, you will be charged. This video represents, either legitimately or symbolically, a major escalation of conflict in the United States. If a police officer shows up to your house with a warrant, we recognize the authority of the police. When a clown does, we recognize no authority from clowns. What happens when the clowns dress up in what looks like actual police gear? This is how it starts. My complaint with Donald Trump's administration right now is the weakness of it. Donald Trump certainly doesn't have what it takes to be the most brutal guy. He doesn't. And I'm sick of it. And I'm just sick of all of it.
So do you see what Mason is arguing here? A lot of these claims about civil war have been going on for like 10 years with Tim Pool. And what's Tim Pool's argument? It's the left wing that's getting this massive funding from outside organizations. How ironic. And that's being used to do these anti-ICE protests, these BLM protests, and to foment all of this civil unrest. And that is the reason the left is causing the civil war that he's so worried about. Do you understand what he's arguing here?
Today we're debating which political party is more violent. Is authoritarianism on the rise in America? And have both parties abandoned their oath to the Constitution?
Is that the mainstream left commits more violence than the mainstream right?
Tim Pool, a man of confidence, comes in with some heavy-hitting topics, comparing the left and the right on political violence, the Constitution. I'm sure he's very informed on the subjects. He immediately chooses to fight a steep uphill battle. With his first claim, the left commits more violence than the right. Let's see how this first exchange went. They started out really strong, as Mason sat down to the chair first.
there's this domestic threat from mainstream left politicians. Like, do you really think Hillary Clinton's like leading the Vanguard Revolution Party? Like,
No.
What is your take?
With the fringe extreme right, you'll see extreme mass shootings. You'll see, someone will show up and they'll unload on people, things like that. On the left, though, you'll see riots, vandalism that you don't see from the right. But the point I'm making is that when you break down the ideology that motivates individuals that commit political violence, there is more often an overlap between what the Democratic Party espouses ideologically and what we see in street-level violence, as well as maybe assassinations, versus what the Republicans would espouse.
Wow, what a truly 200 IQ take. Political violence generally seems to align with a political party. What a goddamn genius. Did anyone else catch the fact that he says these unhinged mass shootings, real bad violence, comes from the right, and the left is all about vandalism? I don't know if Tim knows this, but only one of those is actual violence. Tim Pool starts to agree with a lot of what they're saying. I don't know if it's because he has no argument or whether he's just grifting. So I've also started to track the amount of times he's just straight up agreeing with the other side.
Anytime you see an act of violence that's typically attributed to the left, it is immediately condemned by every Democrat politician.
Indeed.
You couldn't point to one that actually endorses that. Where you have somebody like Donald Trump, who's literally the president of the United States, saying that we should call for the death of congressional members who are fulfilling their civic duty and saying, hey, maybe you shouldn't fulfill illegal orders if you're in the military.
I wouldn't describe Nick Fuentes as a neo-Nazi.
You don't think that Nick Fuentes celebrating Adolf Hitler is not neo-Nazi adjacent?
I think you have to be very specific on what your terms are. And so when you go to an American voter and say something like...
This is our moderate, by the way, everybody. This is our moderate.
Indeed. You don't have riots coming from the Republican Party and the right, although you do have January 6th and things like that.
Alright, so here we go again with the vandalism, and pointing out that riots generally come from the left. And yes, it's no surprise to anyone. In general, revolutions and mass protests are far more likely to be left-wing. Again, you're a goddamn genius, Tim. Mason's reaction was my exact reaction, because, yeah, we don't have riots, but January 6th, probably the worst example of a violent uprising riot in who knows how long, one of the worst moments in American history, perpetrated by the right, immediately undercuts his own argument. But let's continue.
When you take a look at the shootings of the Tesla facilities, the execution of Aaron Danielson, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and one of the attempted assassinations on Donald Trump, not the Pennsylvania one, you can see the underlying ideologies overlap with the Democratic Party.
Let's be objective of where the violence is coming from, and if it's more substantially coming from the right, that is a problem that needs to be tackled.
It's not coming from Charlie Kirk.
Okay, we're not talking about Charlie Kirk. And the fact that you're saying it is more motivating for violence, that the left wing is encouraging people to take those that are committing violence accountable.
In the last 10 years, there have been over 465 incidents of left-motivated political violence that aligns with the Democratic Party, and there's been one on the Republican side, which is January 6th, which admittedly is particularly egregious. January 6th was, that's why we talk about blunt versus acute. Now, the problem is, I already know all you're going to say. You're going to cite FBI stats and Cato, but it's not meaningful to me or any voter to tell me why white supremacists are violent, because I don't like white supremacists, nor will I vote for them. And more importantly, you bring up Nick Fuentes, he is not aligned with Republicans.
The blunt versus acute comment must refer to one's intelligence. Thankfully, we got our first fact check of the episode. In reference to this claim, party leadership cannot consistently be used to exclude right-wing violence while attributing all left-coded violence to Democrats. CSIS explicitly warns that its categories of left-wing and right-wing terrorism do not correspond to the Democratic or Republican parties, or to the overwhelming majority of liberals and conservatives. So, in other words, it's more just fringe people on both sides. And as you'll soon come to find out in the episode, he is so off about the actual stats. Here's just a sneak peek, but wait for the fact check later.
These are motivated by an ideology that you will hear from Elizabeth Warren. Now, of course, she's not telling people to shoot anybody, but she is coming out saying Elon Musk is a dangerous threat to this country. And then you end up with someone going and pulling a rifle up and shooting up a Tesla.
When you understand that the right always says politicians are not responsible for individual actions.
What
Elizabeth Warren saying, hey, maybe we should have the same sort of economic policies they have in Scandinavia.
Why was
That's not her encouraging, go shoot up a Tesla facility. Where Donald Trump saying, let's hang the people who encourage those in the military to actually fulfill their duties.
There is a lot to unpack there, obviously. But to summarize Tim Pool's argument, the left is violent because people like Elizabeth Warren will speak about how big money in politics and big corporations are a danger to the overall system and society, and are not our friends. On the flip side, you have, for instance, after the Charlie Kirk assassination, there was a massive call for civil war and to designate the entire left as terrorist organization, an official enemy of the people. Trump himself has called the left the enemy from within. Trump was responsible for stoking the January 6th violence, where you saw them bringing a noose chanting, "Hang Mike Pence."
And what I'm trying to tell you is that the data is not showing that that is the actual evidence. If
It
you're
does,
talking,
actually.
no, it doesn't.
My team has put together over 10 years,
75 to
465
80% of violence, actual violence, that is being tracked as domestic terrorism comes from the right. It's white supremacist groups.
And white supremacists are not in a large political party getting voted for.
Yes, they are.
Well, so there you just heard it. Tim's team has personally put together a list of 465 instances over the past 10 years. Tim's own definition for violence happens to be any sort of riots, any sort of protest, any political movement where bad thing happens. And he somehow has forgotten to track all of the violence that has happened on the right over the past 10 years. His team must have just forgotten to look up any of the right-wing deaths. And now the argument gets a little bit deeper into the actual institutions that are permitting political violence on either side. And here's a few great points.
You could say the 1960s civil rights movement was more violent than the counter-protesters, but obviously the institutional violence of segregation.
I completely agree.
Right. So,
Yeah.
so what I would say is that the Republican Party is, and the mainstream political right is far more violent because they support ICE ripping and separating families from one another, even from people who have no criminal background. ICE deaths under ICE custody have skyrocketed even as a matter of war abroad, etc. But
domestic, I'd love to talk about war stuff. I'm a big foreign policy guy, but domestically, did this not happen during Barack Obama's administration?
It did, but not to the same extent.
Agreed.
And Barack Obama was criticized for it by who? The political left.
Agreed.
It's important to recognize.
Make an argument.
So I'm about to.
You don't have one? Is that it? If you want to be insults, we can go for insults and
I'm about to.
we can wrap.
I'm about to.
You want to wrap?
Stop delaying my time. So it's important to recognize that simply I condemn is not sufficient when the Republican Party has created a permission structure for individuals to go out and do violence against, I'm about to tell you, with impunity. Immigration and Customs Enforcement is a good example.
Law enforcement.
The Trump administration, they
electoral process.
you know they lost in the courts 10,000 times, right?
That's not true.
It is true.
10,000
times. Yeah, they lost 10,000 times.
I'm sure it would be like 10,000.
They murdered numerous American citizens. And guess what happened to the individuals that carried out those killings? What happened to them?
What happened to them?
Have they been prosecuted? Any investigations? Do you know?
I believe they have not.
Why? It's almost as if when you commit violence,
You're wrong.
You are going to be protected. That's what's going on. That's why Kristi Noem went out and said that Alex Freddie was a domestic terrorist. That's why Stephen Miller said the same thing. And everybody in the entire Republican Party apparatus is echoing those talking points. Because whenever there's violence, they don't condemn it.
Tim Pool caught him on a lie after all. It wasn't 10,000. It was 16,850 rulings against the Trump administration's ICE mandatory detention policy. Well, how does Tim Pool respond? Wrong. You're wrong. Excellent comeback. Now we're getting toward the end of this particular claim, and Tim's about to give us a doozy. Let's listen.
By a population that voted in plurality for ICE to go out and engage in these
Kill American
behaviors,
citizens?
Which sometimes, yes, absolutely. And
they voted for ICE to kill American citizens, really?
Yes. See, I think...
Well, didn't you say the modern political left commits more violence than modern political right? So now you're saying
just because there are riots coming from the left does not mean they're morally right or wrong, or does not mean the right is better or worse. This is a statement about volume of violence that we see and a meaningful issue to a voter.
So there's an honest take, straight from the horse's mouth. He doesn't care about the rise in violence. He specifically voted for Trump to become more violent, place the boot down on the neck of all the immigrants. And furthermore, he's saying that the right in general voted for Trump for the same exact reason. It does kind of sound like the right is a little more violent than the left. The stats didn't agree with him, the volume, as he says, didn't agree with him, nothing agreed with him on this argument. So far it's a disaster. Let's see how it went from there.
The Democratic Party has embraced authoritarianism. Personally went to social media platforms using his name to be suspended for his reporting on COVID vaccination and mandates.
Okay. At a top level, though, who's doing the majority of the actual suppression of speech here?
I don't really have good words for the Republican Party, to be honest. My issue with this debate is in fact what we're seeing right now is that I'll make a claim about the Democratic Party, which has done awful things, and the immediate response is, but the Republicans.
Here's the thing. We can have this great grift of oh, well, the Democrats are bad, but and the Republicans, they might be worse, but the Democrats are still bad. But the option is between Democrats or Republicans.
Yes.
So if Republicans are worse, it doesn't really matter if Democrats are slightly bad.
No, I think Democrats are worse.
Exactly. You can say Democrats, Republicans, bad all day, but whether you like it or not, it's a two-party system. You're gonna vote for one party or the other. But within those parties are politicians who won't agree on a whole lot. So who you vote for matters. Tim Pool brings up, well, it's always but Republicans, but Republicans. Well, unfortunately for you, Tim, you have to contend with the fact that Republicans have done so much worse on every issue that you're bringing up. The violence, the Constitution, on authoritarianism. The progressives will have something more damning than you will about the Democrats, and you have to contend with that. And if you don't vote or just throw away your vote to a third party, unfortunately, you're just going to be contributing to the problem. The powerful want us to be disengaged with the political system, so they can run away with all the power.
One of the key parts about authoritarianism is influence over elections. And
Agreed.
we've seen that throughout the history of right-wing and left-wing, the right-wing side of this country has constantly been election deniers. Famously, Trump tried to find votes in Georgia to win the 2020 election.
How many presidential elections in the last 20 years were denied by Democrats? Mainstream members of Congress going on the floor, rejecting it?
None.
All of them.
Do you see the Democratic Party trying to create an alternate slate of electors to actually try and overturn
that's a
a
different
democratically elected?
So wait. Tim just tried to argue that the Democrats have tried to subvert every single election over the past 20 years? Did I hear that right? I guess he's referring to maybe talking about when Al Gore tried to get a recount in Florida, which was denied, by the way. He conceded only 36 days after the election, and then Clinton conceded on the very next day. And the fact check goes on to say these statements and objections are not equivalent to party-wide claim that certified votes totals were fraudulent. Nor did the Democratic nominees pursue efforts to block the final transfer of power after conceding. But do you know who did do that? In a very drastic way, Donald Trump. So once again, just like the violence and vandalism thing, Tim's argument is just to straight up equate asking for recounts, questioning irregularities, without even following through. Just asking questions, he equates that all to what happened on January 6th. Genius.
Yeah, lock them up.
Thousands of signatures across Massachusetts were then considered moot because they were literal dead people from all across the state. And those are two Republicans. Right. And you have, I mean, there are countless instances of Republicans, not just Donald Trump, trying to subvert American elections. And I think that is one of the most authoritarian things that anybody in this country can do, is to subvert the free and fair elections of the United States.
I think certainly that we have a problem with two ancient political parties.
Yeah, Tim, it's always the two ancient political parties. There's no one good in either party. I guess you have no choice but to vote for fucking Donald Trump.
If these guys are authoritarian, they're the crappiest authoritarians I've ever seen. They gotta go back to authoritarian school and learn how to be authoritarians.
Well, or how to win, right? Losing, you can still be an authoritarian. Like Nazis lose power, but they're still Nazis. You can be an authoritarian and lose, right?
What the fuck is he talking about? Yeah, the Nazis lost because of a little thing called World War II when they fucking declared war on the world, you dipshit. They were winning pretty fucking hard in every election until then. Fascism was defeated by a world war, you dipshit.
Okay, some guy at a rally going,
the 14th Amendment
lock her up. Who was that person again? I forget. All right, it was the same guy who weaponized the DOJ against all his political opponents, or deployed the National Guard to beat down our protesters, deployed ICE to terrorize families and tear apart communities, or launched the SAVE Act to try and just put voter suppression tactics in place so we could steal an election.
We were talking about the Democratic Party, the things they've done, and you've, I think, and I'm not saying this derisively, but I think there's many things that you're ignorant of the Democratic Party has done. You talk about suppression of their political opponent. Well, yeah, they sued so that Trump could not run for office. They tried to claim he was an insurrectionist. He was ineligible. He was arrested several times. They arrested his lawyers.
Yeah. Good point, Tim. They did try to stop him under some insurrection clause, but here's the thing, Tim. He did start an insurrection. He got elected again. The cases were all dismissed. Once again, you're just throwing shit out there when it doesn't mean what you think it means. And now, for the absolute best part of the episode, Tim decides to bring in his claims that the United States is tracking towards a civil war. This one was hot, so I'll let it play out for a bit.
The United States is tracking towards a civil war. Are you going to sit here and agree with me?
Control yourself. You're like 50 years old, bro.
Calm down. Agree with me?
Calm down.
You come down.
I don't agree with you. I disagree with you on everything.
You make fake claims.
Of course I do. If anybody's doing something that they don't actually believe in, it's you, because you're getting paid by the country.
In fact, I argued with Joe Rogan on his show. I advocated on Joe Rogan's show against ivermectin.
David, can you please address the claim?
Thank you for agreeing with me. Have a nice day.
Yeah, you're a coward, bro.
Well, if you don't agree with me, I don't know why you're here. Also, I would recommend doing research before you come to a place like this. Why was Aaron Danielson shot in chest
I'm not
twice?
disagreeing that political violence is taking place in question.
You say Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr, but then when I ask you a question about an assassination, you defer.
You can say that
Let me
there's
ask you
a civil war every fucking year and it doesn't happen. And
I never said there was.
Happened yet.
Do you want me to get you a soapbox?
It's really
I can leave.
easy.
You want me
It's
to
really
go?
easy to
You want me
do
to
what you do.
leave?
It's really easy to do what you do. Like you literally just say, the civil war is happening next year. Civil war is happening next year. It's coming. Make sure you subscribe to Timcast.
Oh boy, her face there. That's She speaks for every single one of us. And unfortunately for Tim, he can't defend it. That's why he stood up and left. They're about to get more into why Trump is more of an authoritarian, and it'll relate to how his ICE handles things. Our protagonist will get a fact check here, because he's going to say no criminal conviction when specifically it's just no US criminal conviction. Doesn't necessarily mean they weren't convicted of something back in their original home country. which I guess means that 70% number could be a little bit skewed. Then they'll agree that, yeah, killing American citizens is bad, and let's see what Tim Pool's solution for that is.
When 70% of detainees in ICE custody do not have a criminal conviction, we're wasting resources and trying to use a show of militaristic power, which is a huge proponent of fascism.
How do you feel about the death of Rene Good and Alex Peretti?
Unjustified.
Are you going to do anything about it?
I'm going to rally everyone here.
Is rallying going to stop murder?
I don't do this. It's each other right and left.
Do you believe speaking up will stop ICE from killing people?
I think speaking up will get us to the right process of voting people in the midterms. What do you want to do against ICE?
I like ICE.
Then you're happy that they're killing people?
No.
Okay, so what are you going to do?
I'm going to vote for Trump again.
Wait, what? Okay, he does say he's going to vote for Vance, not Trump, but he's just tripling down on the whole ICE policy after agreeing how bad it is, having zero defense for how authoritarian it is, a militarized government being a big part of fascism, just no rebuttals for any of it, and just then says, I'm going to vote for Trump again, because I guess he does agree with it after all. What the fuck is he talking about? And now we're going to get into another claim about the Constitution, and surely he'll be very unbiased here.
That the Constitution effectively does not exist anymore. As of today, there's actually two distinct large body politics, if that's the way you say it, and they do not agree on the interpretation of the Constitution.
Well, I'll explain to you as the reason as to why it's not
You think
true.
Trump's upholding the Constitution?
I don't think he's upholding the Constitution, but I know for a fact that the left has been, or the Democrats have been actually holding up the Constitution a lot more. If you look at, for example, for example, with Bush,
do you think Republicans believe the Democrats are upholding the Constitution?
Do I think that the Republicans are holding it?
Do Republicans in this country believe Democrats are holding true to the Constitution?
Of course they don't, but that's because
that's the point.
Wait, what's the point, Tim? That the Constitution doesn't matter anymore because one party's insane? You've still provided no substantial evidence that the Democrats are worse on the Constitution than Trump. And it's about to get a lot worse because our favorite protagonist, the absolute MVP GOAT of the episode, Luke, is about to hop in. Let's have a look at Luke.
What is the point of telling a bunch of different progressives that a bunch of things that we all agree with?
I don't know, you tell me.
What is the point of arguing this with a bunch of people who agree with you? Shouldn't you be surrounded by a bunch of people that you so-called condemn?
I guess it's a production question.
Give me a specific about something that you voted for Donald Trump to do.
Tariffs.
How did that work out?
Fantastic for me.
Yeah, we're all rich, right? We're all cruising. That's working out for us.
Well, I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding among people who don't do manufacturing or run businesses on the issue of tariffs. So for me, the issue of trade control was extremely important, and we don't see that from the Democratic Party, so I voted for that. Trump did it, and I fully acknowledge that there's negative repercussions.
You and Luke and everybody, we all just don't understand how economics works. Tim does. He understands that the tariffs, yeah, they're gonna hurt you now, and he's gonna be fine with his Russian money, but in the long term, everything is gonna work out. That golden age that Trump keeps talking about is still just right around the corner. I mean, he's running out of time, which is probably why he needs a third term, but oh, it's coming.
I think Democrats erode the Constitution substantially more.
How?
So, we can talk about the First Amendment. We can talk about the Biden administration going in and get people banned. That's the easiest one.
Right, yeah.
We can talk about the Fourth Amendment.
I remember that nasty Democrat, Brandon Carr, who took down Jimmy Kimmel, the stand-up comedian that I also am.
What did Carr say?
He made a call directly to NBC. Why should unilateral government power be used like that? And why are you just saying, I condemn that, but you're actively doing nothing to fight it?
No, I think the issue largely is regulatory bodies exist. I agree with the existence of regulatory bodies. Sometimes they do things you don't like. You didn't like it here, but I'm sure you like regulatory bodies elsewhere.
How have the Democrats eroded the Constitution just as much as the Republicans, or more specifically Trump in general? I think it all hinges on the fact that it was discovered how Biden's administration had pressured Twitter to regulate some of the misinformation coming out about COVID at the time, and that led to a bunch of right-wingers and conspiracy theorists getting banned. Not an infringement on the First Amendment, by the way. That's Twitter banning people because they are a private company. And the immediate rebuttal, of course, undercutting his entire argument once again, as usual, is that the Trump administration had deliberately pressured to get Jimmy Kimmel fired. Not only that, Trump himself started a propaganda network, Truth Social, and the #1 political donor to his party, Elon Musk, owns Twitter now. Yet somehow, despite the absolute abysmal performance from Tim Pool thus far, his own hubris gets the better of him, and he chooses Luke again as his final opponent. Luke does not hold back with his claim. Let's have a look.
Is that in 2026, all moderates are cowards. From 2000 to 2016, we were kind of controlled by a centrist government. And I feel like that, even though Barack Obama was a progressive for his time, we view him now as pretty centrist, right? We're in a room full of progressives.
I would agree, just even back then as well.
Right. That opened the door for someone like Donald Trump to come in and actively erode our Constitution. Why do you get to sit in the middle and argue both sides while raking in dollars from these exact entities?
Well, what's your proposal?
Luke's line of argument makes Tim Pool incredibly uncomfortable here. Visually, you could just see it. I can answer that. Here's what I propose, Tim. You stop voting for Republicans and Trump. Everything that you could bring up about a Democrat, Trump has done worse. And the slaughter is going to continue. Let's let Luke take it away again.
How is that different, like the central bank entity, right? How is that different than most of the individuals on the right taking money from AIPAC?
That's not a good thing. I don't agree with that. Those are bad things.
Then why do you actively support that? Why do you actively support a president who's made billions of dollars since he's taken office? Why do you support that as somebody who loved Bernie?
The simple answer is the things that I align with, clearly you don't align with, and that puts me in a Trump position as opposed to a Democrat position.
Sure, but the authoritarian practices today, you're willing to look past.
Some of them, yes.
Come on, man. Come on.
Like, do you want me to lie to you and equivocate and pretend that I think politicians are all
I don't
good
want you to
people?
lie to me, and I'm so thankful that you're being honest.
It is silly that you get people who come on here and try to defend the indefensible. Like, sometimes you're a conservative and you're wrong. Sometimes you're a Democrat and you're wrong.
Sure.
I had family who fled war and came to America and were welcomed in the beautiful bosom of this nation to live an amazing life.
Then why are you voting for an entity that wants to erase that?
They don't want to erase it. I think you have a misconception.
A country that continues to change and grow and develop and welcome people in.
I'm going to pause here.
Oh, wow, that sure was rough, wasn't it? Maybe it wasn't Dave Rubin levels of rough. It was definitely a top contender for the single worst debate performance Jubilee has had yet. Pretty much everything that Tim Pool said was wrong, or was just something that the progressives believed and not the party that he votes for. Almost everything he brought up about the Democrats, it was so quick to just point out something the Republicans were doing far worse than them. I honestly am starting to wonder why the conservatives keep doing these. They need to start bringing some better people up. It was an experience. Well, I hope you appreciate that I made this video so you don't have to watch Tim Pool talk for 2 hours. If you like this kind of content, make sure to leave a like, subscribe. Until next time, this is the one they call Johnny Guitar.
My Johnny.